Quite an emotional episode this time around for Yuki Yuna as a hero, the Great Mankai chapter, episode 7. It's my thoughts on the episode, so let's jump into it. Opening up this episode, we see Wakaba preparing for another conference. She is with Hinata, and I almost thought this was a jump forward segment, but I'm guessing this was right at the point in which Wakaba had to go out and announce that, what was going on based on Chikage being put in house arrest. Like I said, I almost thought that this was like a jump forward, that everything has ended, and they're trying to cover it up that Wakaba had been house arrested. But again, similar to a situation somewhere in the middle of this episode, I really wish they would stop jumping around with this story. I really wish they would stop jumping around. But anyway, this jumps to the fight between Wakaba and Chikage, and it really does seem like Chikage's hitting heavy on the idea that you're loved, I'm not, I don't understand, why is it so unfair? I don't want you to take Yuuna away from me. And also really hitting heavy on the idea that, yes, the reason why she's here, she's not going to allow Wakaba to defeat this Vertex because she wants to take out Wakaba before the foresting goes away, because time is standing still right now, and she's able to kill Wakaba without anybody knowing. If she can get rid of Wakaba, she'll just basically disappear. She can cover it up. Pretty cool fight, though. I really do. I think this is similar to how I felt about the previous seasons of Yuki Yuna as a hero. And I think that the fact that they use the CGI in the way that they do has always looked good. It seems like the renders themselves of the characters, plus the cell shadiness, plus the style of the backgrounds and everything, really does help the CGI blend in really well. And I do always appreciate the fact that whenever it's close up, they switch to a more 2D style to kind of cover up the fact that for most of the action, it's all CGI. Still, with that said, there was a couple points throughout this fight sequence where it was trying to use CGI when it was close up, and it was kind of obvious at that point. You kind of see the proportions being a little bit awkward, but for the most part, looked really good. I really did like this whole sequence, plus especially with Chikage's particular style of her awakening. It looked really good. I love the robe and the cloak and everything. Even though in the last episode impressions, I kind of felt like it looked like a Taisha outfit. These are obviously all like mirror images of Chikage that she's able to create, which I thought was really cool. And this obviously continues. She keeps pushing herself, obviously losing a lot of blood. Wakaba's kind of looking out for her safety, saying, look, you need to stop because you're not going to be able to survive this. But again, Chikage's perspective is she wants to take out Wakaba so that she alone can be with Yuuna. And it was interesting because my theory on this entire story was this concept of a evil magical girl, like somebody who is using the power of the divine tree that doesn't see things morally the same as the heroes. But in this episode, we really get a clear picture that, yes, the divine tree still sees the morals the same way as we do, as it cuts off Chikage. Chikage loses her power and she falls to the ground, because the divine tree has finally stated she is not worthy to be a hero anymore. It has basically cut off her power and stopped her from being a magical girl. But even still, as she falls, Wakaba still protects her. Like, even though you have done all this stuff, Chikage is like confused, like, why are you protecting me at this point? Because this vertex hatches and all these things come pouring out of it. She still protects Chikage because Chikage is one of her. She's one of her soldiers. She's one of her team, one of her comrades. And even if she's done all this stuff, she's still going to protect her. She's still not going to allow people to die. Which I think was a great eye-opening experience for Chikage, who obviously always seen Wakaba as this enemy. Somebody who's taking the one thing that she has away from her, and so she despised her. And despite that, she's being protected now by that same person. All the way to the point where Wakaba is going to be attacked by one of them, and Chikage jumps up and takes the hit, chopping off her arm and pretty much leaving her to bleed out. Which this whole scene after the foresting goes away was really powerful, because again, it has Chikage continuing to express the fact that I hated you. And even still, I looked up to you, so maybe I did like you. And on the same end, Wakaba's sorrowful because, one, she's losing another one of her comrades, but not only that, but she doesn't want to lose anybody else. She's lost enough people at this point. Even this person who tried to kill her, she doesn't want to lose. This person that was one of hers. And again, this is where I get into my argument of how I don't like how the story was told, because there are these powerful points right here. But what happens is later on, we get a perspective of a backstory, which we got very few of. We've been seeing all these scenes of them fighting, and this entire time we get this perspective that they don't have a bond. But what do we get? Later on, they find a diploma that Chikage has been keeping, and what does it do to us? It shows us them all together. them all creating this diploma that is given to Chikage as a form and a bond. This was a promise, a friendship bond that they all had that we never got to see all the way up to this point. Every scene so far has betrayed Chikage distant from Wakaba. But yet, we're supposed to be told after the fact, no, Wakaba was there with her. Wakaba was pretty much her mentor. And that's what's frustrating at this point. But yes, unfortunately, Chikage dies and they cover it up. The entire Taisha does not like Chikage after this point. The Divine Tree cut her off. And so unfortunately, after they tell Yuuna what happened, they end up going to her memorial. And yes, the memorial that has, Anzu and Tamako on it does not include Chikage. The Taisha has chosen to basically remove her, to cover it up, essentially. What happened, they state that she is unfortunately lost, but they don't represent her as a hero. And Yuuna, upset about this, wants to find where they put Chikage, which we find out that Chikage's body was given back to her family, and they go to see the family. The father apparently has basically skipped town and disappeared. The mother is in the hospital, and they go looking through their house, and that's the point in which they find this diploma that they gave Chikage, and they start reminiscing about this whole experience of, training with her, and then them giving her this diploma together and celebrating together with her. And this is also the scene in which Wakaba, which I'm actually surprised by, Wakaba finally reveals to Yuuna exactly what happened. That Chikage tried to kill her, but also that Chikage saved her life in the end. Following this, Yuuna is obviously back in peak condition again, or at least that's what they claim. And Wakaba is supposed to do another conference in front of the people to kind of give them an update on what's going on. Yuna's obviously upset because the statement essentially says that because Yuna's okay, because Wakaba's okay, the town is safe. Like, these two are in peak condition, so we're fine. Everything's fine. And this is obviously upsetting to Yuuna. But, this is very surprising, when Wakaba actually goes to do the statement, she says all this stuff, but she says one other aspect. She finally says what Chikage basically wanted to say this entire time. She finally takes into her own self the frustrations that Chikage had. Like, this is a warning. This is an example. Not to let what happened to Chikage go unnoticed. She states, we're human too. We're not gods. And so thus, all this pain and suffering we're going through, we're human, and it hurts us. Basically pushing on this idea that we're putting our lives on the line despite all this stuff. And despite us suffering, and that Chikage was suffering, and what Chikage went through. And in the end, despite all that, Chikage was a hero. Chikage is the reason why Wakaba is standing before them. Why Wakaba can fight on is because Chikage sacrificed her own life. And if that doesn't make a person a hero, she don't know what is going to make a person a hero. I thought those statements were fantastic. Wakaba finally coming out to being more than just this duty-bound superhero that tries to hide her suffering and pushes for her own revenge. I really do think this is a great development point for Wakaba. Unfortunately, for the whole story is at the cost of Chikage, but it shows that growth that she has to speaking out. And it, obviously upsets the Taisha. The Taisha are like, wait, this can't be good. And they're like, I almost wish that Wakaba, when they were walking away, and they're like, hey, this is not going to be a good thing. I kind of wish that she would have said, I don't care. If you want me to continue fighting, you're going to acknowledge her as a hero. I wish it kind of went a little bit like a step further, but that's essentially what she's saying. Like, I'm out there fighting. You're going to recognize what she did because I'm here. But it does seem like it works because the Taisha decide to, the way she puts it, put a temporary hold on excluding Chikage from things. So it's like this aspect of, let's just show Chikage for a while. We'll acknowledge her. We're going to not hide that she exists just to appease Wakaba. Whether that's because Wakaba has stated that, or if it's because she made such a statement to the people of this area that they were afraid the people would be upset if they didn't show them, like, okay, the hero over here is talking about their suffering and came out of her way to say that this person was actually a hero, and you're still ignoring her. That doesn't seem right. Yeah, and this whole episode ends on a dire note. Essentially, now that we only have 2 heroes left, they're basically stating that something's coming around the corner, a huge attack. They have an oracle that is stating that the biggest attack possible is coming, and it's not good because, again, we only have 2 heroes. Which again leads me back to my question mark of who the heck is Hinata? Again, I'm assuming that she's a Miko. I'm certain that last time I mentioned my confusion of her, somebody's probably said in the comments who she is. But again, I don't really want to be told by possible spoilers. I want to see the story tell me who Hinata is. And so far, we really haven't gotten a perspective of her, besides the fact that she's not a chosen hero because she's paused too. When the flowering or the foresting happens, or whatever, and the vertex show up, she is paused, which means that she's not a chosen hero, which makes me think that she's a Miko, but I think even a Miko should be involved as well, unless Mikos aren't the same thing as a hero, which I guess makes sense. Like I said, really great episode. I think this was a good development point for Wakaba. Some fantastic character development for her. Really, like I said, going from a duty-bound revenge, she does struggle with things. It's just her outward appearance is always cold. And that's obviously what irritates Chikage. Chikage hates the fact that she is so stern and that she doesn't cry and all this stuff. And it's obviously because Wakaba does not want to show it. Wakaba has a goal, and she doesn't want to appear as both weak or be a burden upon those around her. Obviously, like after Yuuna leaves, what does Wakaba do? She finally shows vulnerability because the only person she could show that to is Hinata. Hinata is the only person that she's confining in her weakness because Hinata is not in the battlefield. Hinata does not rely on her to be strong because she's not in the battlefield with her. Obviously, if Hinata was in the battlefield with Wakaba, I don't think she would show that weakness. She wants to show strength to Yuuna. She wants to show strength to Chikage, to the people, to the Taisha. Hinata is the only one that she's not duty-bound to show her strength to. So she's able to be weak around her. This is basically the person that keeps her sane in the end because she's able to vent. She's able to, again, show her weakness. But yeah, again, I'm not going to get too much into it again because I think I've beaten this dead horse to death. But yeah, I'm still not happy with how they're telling the story. I love the story. I love all the beats of this story. It's been fantastic. This has been literally the saving grace of this season is this story arc. Like I said, the Sentinel arc was good, but at the same time, it wasn't the usual pedigree that I love about this series. This is the story that I've been waiting for. I'm super excited for it. I've enjoyed it so far. I love the aspect of the dark magical girl. Was interesting to see that the Divine Tree gave up on her, which is another aspect of that I wasn't sure about, if the Divine Tree would see things the same way humans do. It's kind of like my thoughts on Eden deities know only peace. This idea of these Edens that are these deities that essentially don't see morals the same way humans do. They'll fight to help the humans, but they don't see what the humans do to each other as being bad or good. They just go like, I don't understand it. I don't understand why you think that's a bad thing. And I kind of felt that be the same way with the Divine Tree. The Divine Tree doesn't care what happens between the humans. It just cares about preserving the area. But this kind of shows this idea that the Divine Tree does want to put upon the people its own set of morals. It is a divine being that is willing to push upon the humans its own sense of morality. Again, not to say that the Divine Tree sees that Chikage wanting to kill Wakaba over jealousy of Yuuna is a human morality that it wants to exact on, but that it itself sees that morality as wrong. It's not going to do what the humans want. It's going to do what it sees as being right or wrong. And in that case, it matches human beings and the idea that no, Chikage shouldn't do that. Which is just me kind of probably looking... That's the kind of stuff I find fascinating. It's that little bit of extra information about how the Divine Tree itself sees morals as. But again, my issue, and this is what I was getting to originally when I got into that big tangent, my issue again of this arc is I don't like the order in which it's being told. And that was my same argument with the Sentinel arc, is that should have been told back before the hero chapter. That should have been adapted over there. And similarly with this, I don't know if the source material is the same way, but I do know based on my watching this adaptation, if it's, you know, word for word, if it's scene per scene, then I'll blame the source material too, but I don't like the order in which this is being told. Because my biggest argument right now with this episode specifically is that prior to the scene of the diploma, I seen zero interaction between Wakaba and Chikage. What I seen all the way up until that point was that Chikage and Wakaba had zero interactions. The only interaction I ever seen was the scene where Chikage is upset at Wakaba for not crying after losing two of their allies. Beyond that, I seen 0 points in which they made any interactions. So my assumption was there is zero bond between these two. But what does that diploma scene tell me after the fact, after she's dead? Oh wait, Chikage did have interaction with the other people. They hung out. They talked, they giggled, they celebrated together. That's a huge, important detail to know to the impact of that death, to the impact to Wakaba and why she's attacking her. It makes Wakaba being attacked by this girl even more severe and confusing. It makes it more impactful. It makes it more severe. It changes the weight of it. And that's my struggle. Now, the only thing that offsets that is that technically in the perspective of Chikage, she's in a delusional state. We've seen that with her talking with this other self inside this bus when she's alone. This other self is breaking this bonds that she had with all these other girls. After the loss of two of them, after this argument with Wakaba, after the only bond that she has remaining is with Yuuna, she's becoming separated. And so maybe not showing all that stuff lets us see this separation that she has where she doesn't believe anybody likes her. Maybe that was their intent. That's the only way that I can justify not having that context before the actual end of her. So, at any rate, solid episode. I am not looking forward to the next episode because it sounds like they're going into a very, very rough battle. And unfortunately, all we have left is Wakaba and Genki Yuuna. I don't really want to see Yuuna getting... Because again, my assumption at this point is that I don't think Yuuna's going to make it by the end. We know that Wakaba's going to make it because in the end, she makes the story. But at the same time, that could be somebody else that wrote it and claimed that they're Wakaba. So my theory of it being Chikage is incorrect at this point because she's gone. But I don't know. Again, we're reading a story that was written. Chikage could have lived, but she wrote that she died. I'm going on some crazy, crazy thought process there. So yeah, that's my thoughts on episode 7 of Yuki Yuna as a Hero, the Great Mankai chapter. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like down below. Comment, let me know what's thought of the episode. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video if you can. Support us on Patreon or the tips link in the description below. And we definitely appreciate everybody that does. And y'all take care.